Your contributions will be forgotten, so there's no need to worry." The words echoed in Logan's modern office as I stared at the severance agreement I had just signed. An electronic signature and a cold comment were all that remained after 5 years of 70-hour work weeks. Though I could feel my heart tighten, I kept a calm expression. Thankful for the opportunity, I rose from my seat with professional composure until the very end. I am Dana Whitaker, Senior Systems Engineer, or, more accurately, I was a Senior Systems Engineer who just lost their job. Logan Merritt, our CEO, didn't even bother to lift his head from his laptop. The San Diego sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows we installed after securing our series of funding, reflecting off his perfectly styled hair. $10 million to expand an organization I helped build from the ground up. I walked through the vast office space, passing by rows of engineers who were unaware I wouldn't be returning the next day. Currently, a few of them are working with my code I wrote during countless sleepless nights, which became the foundation for our entire product. The custom system architecture I developed during the days we worked in a dilapidated warehouse in the heart of the city. When air conditioning was no longer within reach, I kept coding, despite sweat dripping down my back. Thomas, one of the new hires, unaware of the situation, was called out from his desk as he was leaving early. I responded with a faint smile, though my eyes didn't share the same sentiment. I quickly packed my meager personal belongings, a coffee tumbler, a framed family photo of my sisters, and a small plant. After 5 years, I only needed a small canvas bag to gather all my belongings. Everything else had been transferred to this organization. I felt a breeze as I stood waiting for the elevator. Logan's statement that my contributions were forgotten was not only insensitive, but also completely wrong. My traces still marked every line of code in that system. The documentation was organized in my own way, with brief notes that only I could understand. I had purposely not created the detailed guide that I should have done 3 years ago, constantly postponing it for more pressing tasks. As the elevator doors opened, I stepped in. I caught one last glimpse of the office once my second home before the doors closed. In that moment, I realized one thing: they truly had no idea what they had done. I wasn't angry yet, but I suddenly became acutely aware of my value and the precise location of all the original architectural drafts, version logs, and correspondence related to the intellectual property bearing my name. My father's failure had been a part of my past. In the 1990s, he was a brilliant engineer who developed a groundbreaking battery system. His name was erased from all press releases, and he was forced to resign when his company went public. I had sworn that I would never let that happen to me. But now, at 29 years old, I was leaving Quantum Shift with only a severance check and a non-disclosure agreement that I had carefully reviewed before signing. The NDA protected the company's trade secrets, but it didn't cover my personal documentation process or the files I had sent to my personal attorney right before entering Logan's office. 3 weeks prior, I had anticipated this outcome. Troy, the new engineering consultant's introduction, the whispered conversations, the closed-door meetings. I wasn't panicking. I had been prepared. While I was on the road, I called Valerie Knowles, my attorney. I said, I've been fired. They're hiring someone with more experience. Valerie responded with a calm voice, I understand. What about the severance package? Standard NDA, 6 months salary. No additional information regarding intellectual property beyond the provisions in my employment contract. Valerie smiled through the phone. You're a smart girl. The files you sent are intact. Join us tomorrow to discuss your options. The next day, I didn't feel the usual urge to check my work email or Slack messages. So, I stayed in bed until 9 a.m. For the first time in years, I made myself a proper breakfast and drove to Valeri's office with a strange sense of lightness. Valerie had arranged my paperwork on her conference table. Architecture diagrams, version control logs, emails clearly proving my contributions, and most importantly, evidence that I had developed the custom authentication system that set QuantumShift's product apart in the market. Valerie looked at me with recognition. You've been really meticulous. Very few people document their work like this. I smiled and replied, my father always taught me to keep all receipts. So, what are you planning to do with all of this? She asked, gesturing to the pile of documents proving my 5 years of work. I sat down, contemplating my remaining options. I'm not the kind of person to seek revenge. I wasn't raised to think about vengeance. Instead, I was taught to value myself. I haven't decided yet, but I'm determined to be fully prepared. Valerie nodded in agreement. Her gaze filled with understanding. Once they realize your absence, they will come looking for you. And when they do, we'll be ready. I left Valeri's office, feeling an unusual sense of peace. My time was once again my own, and I decided to use it wisely for the first time in 5 years. I sat at a beachside cafe, sipping an overpriced latte and browsing job listings when my phone rang. 3 weeks after I left, the caller ID read Joseph Bryant, the Chief Technology Officer of QuantumShift. Dana, he said, his tone overly friendly. How have you been? I replied with a neutral tone. I'm fine, Joseph. What can I help you with? The team is working on the upcoming release and has a few questions about some of your architectural decisions. I was anticipating that you might have the opportunity to conduct a brief consultation. I sipped my coffee slowly. The term consultation was an intriguing selection. I am uncertain if that would be suitable in light of the circumstances surrounding my departure, I stated with caution. Joseph cleared his throat. Dana, we are prepared to reimburse you for your time. Logan may have been. He made an impulsive decision. I was hasty and repeated the action. Is that the name we are using? A lull ensued. The documentation is somewhat specialized. I nearly burst out laughing. Specialized was a courteous way of expressing that the new team was unable to comprehend my personal shorthand. Yes, I had documented everything. However, my approach was entirely logical to me, and it appears that no one else did as well. I regret to inform you that I am currently quite preoccupied. Troy's extensive experience may enable him to devise a solution. Dana, Joseph initiated the conversation. However, I interrupted him. Joseph, I extend my warmest wishes to you. Without a doubt, I terminated the conversation. My phone promptly vibrated with a text message from Joseph. Your consultation rate can be doubled. Kindly reevaluate. I did not respond when I placed my phone down. Allow them to simmer for a period of time. I received an email from Ethan Wilson, one of the junior engineers I had mentored, while I was preparing supper that evening. The subject line was, "You won't believe this." Ethan had always been devoted to me, appreciating the assistance I had given him when no one else had the time to do so. The email was succinct. "Dana, everything is in a state of disarray. Troy is incapable of comprehending your authentication system. Major issues have been reported by 3 consumers following the most recent deployment. Logan is assigning responsibility to the engineering team, however. It is widely recognized that their inability to comprehend your architecture is the root cause. Joseph is in a state of complete distress. I simply wanted to inform you of this. Do you miss your presence here?" My eyes were fixed on the email as I sat at the kitchen counter. I was not anticipating the rapid unraveling of events. A portion of me experienced a momentary flutter of apprehension regarding my former colleagues. The majority of them were virtuous individuals who were thrust into an unfavorable circumstance. However, another aspect of me, which recalled Logan's dismissive smirk, experienced the initial glimmer of gratification. My telephone called once more. Valerie was the individual in question this time. She informed me that I have received a telephone call from the legal department of Quantum Shift. They wish to negotiate a consulting agreement. Have you already done so? I was taken aback by the rapidity with which the situation had escalated. Valerie said, "It appears that they are experiencing some technical difficulties," with a deliberately understated tonality. "What is your recommendation?" I inquired. She responded, "I suggest that we allow them to continue to sweat. The more frantic they become, the more advantageous your situation will be." I felt a change within me as I hung up, as I came to the realization that I now possessed the power in this situation. It was not about retribution, rather, it was about acknowledging my worth. Finally, it appeared that recognition was imminent. The frequency of the contacts increased in the 4th week following my dismissal. Joseph, Troy, and even Ethan have made informal requests for assistance. When I opted to respond, I maintained my distance and provided ambiguous responses. While they were in the process of scrambling, I was preoccupied. I would arrange meetings with 3 competing firms to investigate the market landscape rather than seeking employment. It was imperative that I comprehend my position of fortitude. Logan himself contacted me on a bright Tuesday morning, precisely 1 month after I had cleared my workstation. He stated, "Dana," his voice struggling to preserve its customary assurance, "it appears that we got off to a rocky start. I have been in conversation with the board regarding your departure, and we are of the opinion that there may have been a miscommunication." I reiterated the misunderstanding, maintaining a monotone tone in my voice. "Regarding precisely what?" Logan stated that he found it challenging to articulate the terms value you bring to the company. "We would appreciate your return as a consultant to assist with the transition." I nearly inquired about the possibility of my contributions being forgotten, but ultimately refrained from doing so. There is no necessity for me to disclose my hand at this early stage. I express my disinterest in consulting. However, I am grateful for the opportunity. Be sensible, Dana. We are discussing a substantial consulting fee, which amounts to 6 figures for a few weeks of labor. I replied, reiterating my response to Joseph. I am currently quite occupied. Best of success in all your endeavors. Valerie was promptly contacted after I terminated the conversation before he could respond. Logan has recently contacted me with an offer of a consulting position. I informed her that the salary is 6 figures. Valerie stated that they are becoming increasingly desperate. However, we must exercise caution. Have you been keeping an eye on their product? I had, in fact. The client-facing dashboard of Quantum Shift had been experiencing substantial delay. Their Twitter support account was operating at full capacity, responding to complaints. In the previous week, their stock price experienced a 15% decline, despite the fact that it had surged following the funding announcement. I verified that their situation is not favorable. Valerie expressed satisfaction. I have been conducting my own investigations. Did you know that Logan presented your authentication system to the investors as his own creation? The sensation of a frigid shock swept through me. What is the matter? I am in contact with a member of their council. Logan has been claiming credit for your work for an extended period of time. It appears the investors were unaware that the technical backbone was solely your creation, and they were funding his vision. The revelation should not have taken me by surprise, however, it did. Dismissing me was one thing. Another attempt was made to fraudulently claim credit for my work. I didn't anticipate that this would cross a line. What is our subsequent course of action? I inquired, my voice becoming increasingly tense. Valerie recommended that we delay for an additional week, allow the situation to continue to deteriorate. Afterward, we send a formal notification of the intellectual property rights that have been retained. Is it possible to accomplish this? I executed their employment contract. The contract encompasses work that is performed within the scope of your employment. However, what about your custom authentication system, which is the distinguishing feature of their product? Prior to joining Quantum Shift, you independently created the initial prototype. Proof of this is available in the form of the dated GitHub repository. The fundamental intellectual property could be argued to be yours, despite the fact that you brought it with you and refined it for their purposes. I vividly recall the early days when I was coding in my apartment on weekends and working on the authentication system as a personal project before Logan approached me about joining Quantum Shift. Logan had dismissed this as unimportant when I was recruited, despite the fact that I had brought it to his attention. It now appeared that his dismissal could be exceptionally costly. I said slowly, my comprehension beginning to emerge. So we have leverage, Valerie responded. More than leverage, we have a legal claim that, if pursued, could potentially halt their entire operation. I reclined in my chair, contemplating this information. I had emerged from Quantum Shift with a sense of helplessness. I almost felt pity for them, as the tables had been completely turned. Nearly 5 weeks following my departure, Quantum Shift encountered an untenable circumstance. Rumors of client departures were circulating in industry forums, and their stock had declined an additional 20%. My phone had ceased to sound, a silence that was more foreboding than the desperate calls. My doorbell rang while I was at home, viewing a documentary. Olivia Harris, the main investor from Threshold Ventures, was standing on my porch when I opened the door, which was a surprise to me. She stated, "Ms. Whitaker," her demeanor grave. "I regret the sudden visit, but this was an urgent matter. Is it possible for me to enter?" I hesitated before stepping aside to allow her to enter. Olivia was consistently amicable during investor presentations. However, we had never engaged in a one-on-one conversation. She sat down on my settee and stated, "I will be straightforward. Quantum Shift is in peril, and I am confident that you are aware of the reason." I responded with caution, as I have been informed that there are some technical difficulties. Olivia fixated me with a gaze that penetrated my soul. "Nobody is capable of rectifying the authentication system's malfunction." Logan informed us that they had arranged for redundancies in the event of key personnel departures. However, this was evidently fraudulent. I maintained my silence, anticipating her next words. She continued, "What is even more alarming is that we have identified inconsistencies in the information we were provided regarding the technical leadership of the company." Logan presented himself as the architectural visionary, while you were essentially the implementer of his ideas. I was unable to suppress the bitter chuckle that escaped me. "Is that the information he provided to you?" "It is, but our technical advisors have reviewed the situation and have determined that you were the genuine architect of the system. Your role was misrepresented by Logan in order to secure funding." I exhaled deeply. I am not taken aback. However, I am disappointed. Olivia stated, "I am the same. Threshold allocated $10 million to an investment that was partially founded on false assumptions. Ms. Whitaker, that is the reason I am present. An emergency meeting has been scheduled for tomorrow by the board. Logan is not aware that I am meeting with you. However, I am of the opinion that your attendance at this meeting is extremely important." This was unanticipated. I had anticipated legal negotiations, not a board invitation. "What is the specific proposal you are making?" I inquired. "I suggest that you disclose the truth. Assist us in comprehending the situation and the available alternatives. I assure you that your contributions will be appropriately recognized and appreciated in return." I contemplated this for a brief period. "Ms. Harris, I am grateful for your offer. However, my attorney has advised me against directly engaging with Quantum Shift in the absence of appropriate legal safeguards." Olivia appeared to be unsurprised as she nodded. "I comprehend. What if we include your attorney in the meeting? This does not involve the negotiation of agreements in the shadows. The issue is one of transparency. Investors require information regarding the actual circumstances." Her proposal was taken into account. Attending the board meeting could be perilous. However, it also afforded the opportunity to directly communicate with those who possess the authority to effect genuine change. Finally, I stated, "I will need to consult with my attorney." Olivia, of course, was prepared to depart. "The meeting is scheduled for 10 o'clock a.m. tomorrow. I anticipate your attendance." I promptly contacted Valerie, and provided her with an explanation of the situation after she departed. Valerie observed that this is an intriguing development, prior to my expectations, but potentially advantageous. You will be speaking from a position of strength, not desperation, if you attend. What about the formal notification, which was our initial plan? We are able to continue with that. In fact, I would suggest sending it tonight in advance of the meeting. This will ensure that they are cognizant of your legal status upon your arrival in the room. Valerie assured me that she would promptly transmit the notification, and I concurred. I was unable to fall asleep that evening. A confrontation that I had not sought, but now welcomed, would occur tomorrow. I was not intending to exact revenge. Rather, I was resolute in my resolve to rectify the situation. Logan had an attempt to eliminate me from the narrative of Quantum Shift's triumph. Tomorrow, I would permanently inscribe my name once more. The Quantum Shift offices appeared identical to the state they were in when I departed 6 weeks prior. However, the atmosphere was distinct. Valerie and I strolled through the reception area, causing a stir as we passed. We were pursued by the murmurs as we traversed the hallway to the primary conference room. Upon our arrival, the tension was tangible. The board members, which included Olivia Harris, 3 other investors, and the company's executive team, were seated around the long table. Logan was seated at the head of the table, his characteristically confident expression absent. Joseph, the chief technology officer, appeared to have been without sleep for several days. Olivia rose to welcome me, saying, "Ms. Whitaker, we are grateful for your attendance. Ms. Knowles, this is undoubtedly your counsel." Valerie responded with a seamless response, placing her briefcase on the table. "We have received your invitation and are present in good faith. However, it is important to mention that we submitted a formal notification of retained intellectual property rights to Quantum Shift's legal team last night." Logan's visage was red with rage. "This is manifestly preposterous. The company's ownership of all work product is explicitly stated in the employment contract you signed." I responded in a composed manner, acknowledging that I am cognizant of the agreement I signed. However, the authentication system in issue was initially developed prior to my employment. I have evidence that is documented, including the original GitHub repository with timestamps. Victor Lee from Magnitude Capital, a silver-haired investor, leaned forward. "Logan, is this accurate? Are you aware of this?" Logan's expression became increasingly tense. "Dana is making false assertions. She may have had some preliminary code, but any significant work was completed during company hours. I connected my laptop to the conference room display after retrieving it from my luggage. By your consent, I would like to provide some substantiation," Olivia affirmed, and I accessed the GitHub repository, which displayed the commit history that was evidently predating my tenure at Quantum Shift. I then presented correspondence between Logan and me from my early days at the company, in which I explicitly referenced the inclusion of my authentication system in the project. Valerie noted that Mr. Merritt acknowledged Dana's prior work in these communications, but he never formalized any transfer of intellectual property rights beyond the standard employment agreement, which does not encompass pre-existing work. The board members exchanged glances, and the room fell silent. Logan shifted uneasily in his seat. I persisted, retrieving documents from investor presentations. These are the materials that were distributed to you during the series around. You will observe that the authentication system is emphasized as a critical competitive advantage. However, my name is conspicuously absent from any of the credits. Victor Lee removed his spectacles and began to rub his temples. Logan, you identified yourself as the technical visionary responsible for these systems. Logan insisted that I oversee their development. I refuted that supervision is a form of creation, and your supervision was primarily characterized by the imposition of unattainable deadlines and the assumption of responsibility for the outcomes. Joseph, who had been mute until this moment, cleared his throat. I can verify that Dana was the primary architect of the authentication system. As evidenced by the preceding 6 weeks, we are incapable of adequately maintaining it without her. Logan directed his anger toward Joseph. However, the consequences were already irreparable. Logan was now the subject of open suspicion among the investors. Ms. Whitaker, what is the specific purpose of your visit? Asked another board member. Valerie assumed responsibility. According to my client, Quantum Shift is not being targeted for destruction. She is confident in the product that she assisted in the development. Nevertheless, she is in need of adequate compensation for her intellectual property, proper recognition of her contributions, and assurances against future misrepresentation of her work. Logan challenged that if these conditions are not fulfilled, the notification will remain in effect. Valerie responded with a composed demeanor. The authentication system will be legally prohibited from being used by Quantum Shift, thereby deeming your product non-functional. The situation's actuality appeared to dawn on all individuals simultaneously. Quantum Shift's entire business paradigm, which was valued at $10 million, was at risk, and the engineer they had so readily dismissed, now held the key to their survival. The emergency board meeting persisted for an additional 3 hours. Logan's position deteriorated with each revelation as discussions intensified. Initially, the board members were skeptical of my claims. However, they became increasingly convinced as additional evidence was presented. Victor Lee requested a brief intermission, during which the board members convened in private. Olivia Harris addressed the chamber with a newfound authority upon their return. The board has made several decisions after thorough consideration, she announced. Initially, we are implementing an immediate leadership transition. Logan, we are grateful for your vision in establishing Quantum Shift. However, it is evident that there have been significant misrepresentations during your tenure. Logan's complexion became paler. It is impossible for you to be sincere. I established this organization from scratch. Victor Lee added pointedly that you intentionally concealed a fact from us regarding Dana's technology. Secondly, Olivia stated, we are providing Dana with a new position as Chief Technology Officer, which will be accompanied by appropriate equity compensation and complete recognition for her previous contributions. I experienced a rapid heartbeat. This exceeded my expectations. Furthermore, she stated that we are proposing a licensing agreement for the authentication system, which would include royalties on all future revenue generated by its use. Valerie, and I exchanged glances. This satisfied virtually all of our expectations. And lastly, Olivia stated, "We are requiring a public correction regarding the development of quantum shifts core technology, which will acknowledge Dana's role as the principal architect." Logan abruptly rose from his seat. "This is an error. A person who is holding the company captive is the one to whom you are transferring it." "No," I replied calmly. "Logan, I am not threatening the company. I am merely guaranteeing that the truth is acknowledged." Victor Lee acknowledged. "Logan, the board's decision is irrevocable. You have the option of accepting a reduced role as a strategic advisor or resigning utterly. You have the freedom to make a decision." Logan searched the table for allies, but he was unable to locate any. He abruptly exited the room, leaving the door to slam in his wake. I came to the realization that the vindication I experienced was not motivated by vengeance in the silence that ensued. It was a matter of justice. 3 months later, I addressed our team and a small group of tech journalists from a tiny stage at Quantum Shift headquarters. The organization had experienced an extraordinary transformation. I began today, which is a significant milestone. We are not merely enhancing functionality with the release of our new platform update. We are constructing a new structure based on transparency and collaborative innovation. A team of talented engineers now maintain the authentication system that had previously been my solitary invention. All of the engineers received appropriate credit for their contributions. The documentation was exhaustive and easily accessible, guaranteeing that the company would never again be reliant on the knowledge of a single individual. Olivia approached me with a pleasant smile following the announcement. The transformation has impressed the investors. User complaints have decreased by 87%, and many former consumers are returning. I responded, legitimately proud of our accomplishments. That it is a collaborative endeavor. Certainly, but your leadership has served as the impetus. By the way, have you heard about Logan? I shook my head. Logan had declined the board's offer of an advisory role and opted to depart the company entirely. Olivia stated that he is currently in the process of establishing another venture. However, he is experiencing difficulty in obtaining funding. In this sector, information disseminates rapidly. A fleeting sense of empathy overtook me. I trust that this experience will serve as a valuable lesson for him. Olivia concurred, as do I, although certain lessons are more costly than others. Logan sent me an unexpected email later that day. It was succinct. "Dana, I am responsible for offering a contrition. Instead of attempting to diminish your contributions, I should have realized their value. Your management of the organization is advantageous." Logan. In contemplation of my response, I sat at my workstation. Ultimately, I maintained a straightforward approach. "Logan, I appreciate your contrition. I hope that your future endeavors are successful. Occasionally, the most painful teachings are the most valuable." Dana. It was not a matter of forgiving or forgetting. It was about recognizing the truth, a goal that I had fought for and ultimately achieved.